Alrighty. Okay. So today I am joined by Vulcan.
Hello.
All right. What we're gonna do for this is we're just gonna talk about how Broken Arrow works for the new players and people who haven't like played RTS games and all that kind of stuff and really want to get into Broken Arrow because there is a lot of people that seem to be into it that haven't played anything like that before. So before we get into it, just who I am. I'm LDE. I'm a small little Broken Arrow streamer and YouTuber. I hit number 7 in the first closed beta, and that was number 70 in the last open beta. For those of you who think that matters, and then we played in the tournament, which was super fucking fun. We got to the semifinals, and then I'm looking forward to playing the tournaments again. But we have an entire podcast like on the tournament stuff already. If you want to go check that out. Vulcan, if you want to introduce yourself, I don't. If you guys don't know who Vulcan is at this point, that is insanity to me. But please.
I'm Vulcan. My channel's Vulcan HD Gaming. I have, I guess, over 100,000 subs now, and I've played a lot of RTS games through the years. I guess I got to top 50, I think, in the pre-alpha beta thing, playtest thing that went on. So yeah, I managed to get there, but I'm not sure it really matters. But there we go.
Yeah, and you mostly solo queued for that too, right?
Yeah. So I mostly played like off stream to get content. Yeah. So when I was climbing in the queue, it was all mostly single, and you can see that all on my YouTube. So,
That is
it's mostly solo.
super impressive. That is super impressive. Okay. All right. So for this, the entire thing, what we're going to do is we're going to break down just like the basic mechanics of Broken Arrow and how they work. So in order, we're going to go Recon, Vision, Line of Sight. We're going to do the RTB system, Armor versus Penetration, the Sprint abilities, the Smoke abilities, the trees versus buildings for cover and concealment, or concealment if you're a military nerd, and then economy system, and then the game mode structure for PvP itself. Excuse me. So we'll go into Recon here. So the way that Recon works in Broken Arrow is that each unit has a vision and a optics, or has a stealth and a optics stat. Excuse me, godly. So how that works is your optics is how far you can see. So if you have 1,000 optics, you can see 1,000 meters. And then your stealth is just a divider of your the enemy's optics. So if I have a unit with 2 stealth and he's standing in just like the open, he won't be detected by that unit with 1,000 optics until he's 500 meters from that person, right? And now, to get more into it, there's also buildings and trees. So buildings and trees multiply your stealth by 2, and then so what that means is instead of having 2 stealth, you'll now have 4 stealth. So it will take that 1,000 optic unit to see that unit. It would be 250 meters.
They can get pretty wild with the snipers when they have like 2.5. It gets doubled to 5, and then you can't see them until you're like 100 meters away or something silly.
Yeah. There's actually there's snipers with 3 stealth, so you can get real crazy. But most units have I think the baseline is like 1,200 optics is for like the worst kind.
Yeah, it's like 1,000, 1,200.
Yeah. So snipers can definitely get into the back lines and get crazy. And then I do remember when I was playing against you, actually, Vulcan, in Narva, the snow map. You had the Recon unit that has the APS defeating rocket launcher, and I had no idea that he was like
Vivasanti.
Yeah, he was like right in my face the entire time, and I had no fucking idea. So yeah, that was crazy to see.
I mean, we should probably also mention that when a unit fires, it lowers its stealth.
Yes.
As well.
Yes. So I looked into that more, and so it's like a stacking effect too. So the more that they fire is the more that it increases the flash is what they call it. So there's like a certain like flash mechanic. So like the more you shoot, and then the less suppressed the weapon is, the higher the flash is. And over time it becomes more, and then it stays on for a unknown amount of time. I think it's like 5 seconds or something like that. But that's why, like, you'll see in my videos, and people ask me about it. It's like, why do I turn off my AIM-120s when I'm doing a F-35 strike? It's because if it shoots the AIM-120 at some random target, then I lose all my stealth on my F-35 before it drops the bombs off to go and hit like enemy backlines.
Yeah, it's actually a great tip.
Yep. And then something I learned from you was with those very close range recon, frontline recon dudes, just keep them on hold fire the entire time, and then the enemy's not going to see them. So that was
yeah,
super
especially
cool.
with the Diversanti, using it to like just ambush important vehicles rather than like just letting them free fire is the way to go.
Yeah. Do you have any other little key tips for just like recon itself, stealth play, and all that kind of stuff?
I mean, back to the aircraft one, the other thing with like F-22s using like the long range missiles is not necessarily a good idea, because they again lose their stealth as soon as they fire them, which makes them vulnerable to other long range missiles. So yeah, if you want to actually make sure you kill an enemy aircraft effectively, sometimes you might not want to take like long range missiles on those stealthier airframes, because it's not that effective.
Yeah, I want to add on to that actually, now you said it. So there's something you could do where you hold fire with the aircraft, and instead of just like going face forward at the enemy, you can go around to the side and you can engage them from the side where they can't engage you back with your stealth. And then you're actually using your stealth to do what it's meant for, to get behind people and engage those aircraft in the air. Then they can't shoot back. And then if you do keep the long range missiles on them, it'll ripple fire the AIM-260s and the AIM-120s and all that kind of stuff. So you should get a free kill essentially if you play right.
Yeah, and I guess and the only real thing for newer players to really consider, I think, is the whole fire mechanic. Just making sure you do make good use of it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely learn the hotkeys, because that's what separates like really good players from the average player. And it'll definitely help you out a lot when you're starting, for sure.
Especially if it becomes muscle memory. You will be thinking more about your tactics and your units overall rather than what buttons you're pressing on the keyboard.
Exactly. So to go into more like, or kind of caveat to vision and line of sight, we have with those forests, right? So with forests, there's depth. So if you're closer to the edge of the forest, obviously you can see farther out, and then the enemy can see like where you're at. But if you go more into the forest, then it makes it harder for the enemy to see you. But in the same turn of events, it's harder for you to see outside the forest. So stacking the forest or stacking trees, and then you also do the same thing with like buildings, where instead of like positioning yourself inside the building to see outside of it, just stay behind the building where you're cutting off line of sight, so that you can't be engaged directly by the enemy. So it's a little tip. It's really good for holding points during like the hectic oh shit moments.
Yeah, the other thing to consider about forest though is they do break the line of sight for AA as well. So you've got to make sure that you're not putting your AA too deep into tree lines, and maybe even behind a tree line that can sometimes block you.
So they did buff that recently, and they removed the sightline nerf for AA inside of the forest. So you could be in the middle of the forest.
It still like direct line of sight?
Nope. You could be in the forest and it'll see you out of the forest no matter what.
Okay. Well, there we go.
Yep. And then ambushes, of course. So just when it comes to like visions and line of sight, make sure that you're using it properly to set yourself up for your ambushes or whatever you want to do. Try to think outside the box. Don't be stagnant and all that kind of stuff. You can also use the line of sight tool which is Alt, to see where your friendly units can see, or if there's anything blocking up forward from them. Alrighty, and now we're going to move into the RTB system. So inside of Broken Arrow, it's a different thing than like Warno. Well, I guess you could sell things in Warno, but not all your units, just like transports and stuff.
Just transports, yeah. Unarmed transports.
Yeah. So with Broken Arrow, you could return everything. Anything you can put on the field, you can bring it back to base. And how that works is if it takes no damage and uses no fuel or munitions, when you RTB it, you get 90% of what it costs back to you. And then the upkeep of it is canceled out. So, and it's also sometimes it's faster to shoot a weapon system and RTB it instead of reload it through a supply point, which that I learned from you too during the same game with the fire grads.
Yeah, the Firegrads is an interesting one, but definitely for like cruise missiles, I think is one of the best ones because you can just bring them in at spawn. They have the range more or less for the entire map, especially on smaller maps, and you can just fire them immediately and sell them. So, yeah, that tends to work for the grads. I don't know if it would be faster to sell them because you have to move them so far up to make them effective. So maybe it'd be better in that case to have a supply dump. But for anything that you can fire from close to the spawn, yeah, I think it's way faster to sell them.
Yep, for sure. And then to do it, of course, all you have to do is just press B, and it'll bring your units right back to base. Be careful, though, because it'll take the fastest way. So if you're not trying to run to the enemy, maybe the enemy's behind you in some kind of way, or you went too far forward, it'll just go straight back. Just keep that in mind.
Yep.
Alrighty. Now we have armor versus penetration, and this gets a little crazy because not everything is well known. So
well, there's gonna be stuff you're gonna bring up here that I probably don't even know, to be honest.
All right. So I do have notes here for this to make sure that I'm not speaking wrong. So let me just pull these up real quick, and then.
Yeah, I think for me, most of the things and like unit interactions in the game, I just kind of learned by playing. And I think it's also important to say, especially for new players, don't get too caught up in like learning the ins and outs of everything to begin with. Like, just make sure you play the game, and then you'll pick up what does what to what. Like, what tank does how much damage to this tank in the front armor and so on. Like, if you're using the best Abrams, how much you're going to do damage to a T-14 Armata, you just kind of find out by shooting it, right? Rather than trying to figure it out in your head.
Yes. All right. So there's two different types of damage that could be done. So you have your kinetic, and then you have your explosive, or like HE, heats, and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to kinetic, all right, here's a super math nerd shit. So pen is like 1-to-1 with armor, right? So if you're 1-to-1 with your pen to armor, it is 100% of damage. If your penetration is half of the enemy's armor number, then it's only doing 50% of the damage that it would originally do. So if your tank round does 8 damage per shot, let's say, but it doesn't pen properly, it'll only do 4 damage instead. And then it scales between, right? So that was 1-to-1 and 1-to-2, but obviously it's not always perfect like that. So it scales kind of. And then just a little preface, even though I'm like halfway into this. This is the last known damage calculation that we have, so we don't know if it's still the same for like release. And then when it goes into heat, so it's pen to armor, right? So if you have 2 times the penetration to the armor, it'll do 80% damage. And then if it's 1-to-1, it does 50% damage. And then if it's 1-to-2, it's 20% damage. And then, yeah, so it is a little bit crazy. Don't get too caught up into this, but that is essentially how it works, kind of. So you want more penetration to do more damage. And then you also keep in mind, too, there's certain weapons in the game that have low penetration, but they do top attack only, like the TOW-2 Bravo. Its penetration game is like 70 or something, but it only hits top attack. So keep that in mind. It'll do 100% damage every single time. And then the TOW-2 Bravos, for example, can 2-shot any vehicle in the game, if I remember correctly. Unless it has APS, then it's 3 shots.
Yeah, got to consider APS, yeah.
Yep. And then for those who don't know, APS is like active protection systems. It's like a shield. So what it does is any incoming ATGM or anti-tank rocket flying at the tank, it'll intercept it. So you'll see crazy moments like with there's a version like Hippie shot like 8 or 9 anti-tank rockets at some tank, and it didn't even kill it, and it drove away. So most of those shots got ate up by the APS, and then they were shooting light anti-tank at it, so it wasn't doing too much damage to the vehicle itself. And while we're on this topic as well, just real quick, with light anti-tank, whenever you do hit the vehicle, it's guaranteed to hit a crit. And what that means is it'll hit one of the 4 subsystems of the vehicle, either the ammo rack, the vision, the mobility, or the aiming. So it'll either slow it down a lot or turn it off, depending.
Yeah, I think it needs to get crit once and then crit again in order to completely disable it.
Alrighty. Do you have anything else to add on or questions?
Well, when
armor?
it comes to active protection and smoke and stuff, just make sure that you can check all of this in the armory. It will have an icon for the APS on the unit icon, so it's always worth checking if your unit has or hasn't got it. And you can also check that in game.
Yes.
Actually, another thing to point out is in game at the bottom of the screen, you can actually left click on the icon of the unit you have selected, and it will bring up the unit information, which is really, really handy to have while you're actually in game.
Yep, that makes sense. You can also, if you start to really know the game, you could zoom in on enemy units, and then you could tell like what they have by looking at their units. Sometimes they're facing not the correct way, so just don't pay attention to like which way they're facing. But you can see like what armaments they have, what armor they have, and it's usually pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Which you did that to me as well on that same map with my tanks.
Yeah, I'm like, what's this tank? And especially like if you learn like the silhouettes of certain tanks, you can see what they are without actually knowing more of the game telling you what they are.
All right, and now this will bring us over into the sprint ability. So sprinting is it's pretty cool. I think it's unique to Broken Arrow. I don't play every RTS, so I don't know. But essentially, what this does is it negates the running nerf that you get from suppression when your infantry is pinned down, right? So if your infantry is being shot at, they get pinned down, and you can notice that by their icon turning yellow or red. Yellow means like they're crouching, and then red means they're in the prone and they're barely moving. But to get out of that, if you hit sprint, you'll start moving at faster than normal speed because you're sprinting, and it negates the nerf from your suppression entirely. But keep in mind, when you're sprinting, you can't shoot any weapon. Even the ones that you can shoot when you're moving normally, no weapon can be shot while you're sprinting.
Also, sprinting's cancelled inside of a building.
Yes.
So you can use that to your advantage if you want to like sprint from one building to another. That works nicely. But bear in mind, like if you click the sprint before you leave the building, you can kind of like waste a lot of sprint. So always make sure you wait until it's like outside the building to sprint, because I've done that multiple times where you click the sprint button and then it takes like 1 second to dismount your infantry from the building or whatever, and then you don't have half the sprint left.
Sprinting is something you definitely want to use a lot, but you also want to make sure you don't waste it at the wrong time, because then you're kind of just stuck out in the open. But the good thing about Broken Arrow is you don't only have sprints on your infantry, you also have smokes. So with smokes, you can do the same thing. If you get suppressed, you can smoke off, and then you cut that line of sight so you're not being shot at anymore. I'm not too sure if the force fire into smoke works anymore. I know force fire into trees doesn't work anymore. I should have tested.
Force fire in the playtest, you could force fire into smoke, yeah.
Okay.
But you can't force fire into trees anymore.
Okay. So it does save you from the AI version shooting at you, but if the player takes over and like micros and force fires, then the smoke will still it won't help you out that much.
I think in one of the video where it was me versus you, when I'm like diving for the point at the end, I think I'm specifically do it at that point where you drop smoke onto your infantry and I fire positioned into the smoke.
Oh, really? I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Okay. Yeah, it's really good for cutting, like for vehicles too, because vehicles get smoke. Cutting off ATGM lines of sight. You can also bait out like the ammunition from the enemy ATGMs by going forward to your smoke and then reversing back into it after they shoot. But don't get too crazy with it. Try to only do that once if you're going to do that, because your smoke will expire and you'll start taking the ATGM rounds to the face. Also, keep in mind that artillery and mortar pieces can deploy smoke in 3 different variations. They can do linear, where they try to engage the entire line all at once. A rolling barrage, where they'll create the line over time, going forward or backwards, whichever way you designate it. And then there's point smoke, where you just want one area, like a circle, engulfed in smoke. So you have those to your disposal.
You can also click and drag to make the circles bigger and smaller. That's always worth noting.
Yes, of course. And then I don't think the size of the munition changes the size of the smoke, but that's something I have to test. Unless if you know it.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Okay. I think it doesn't, but I'm going to test that for sure. Do you have anything else to bring up with the sprint and smoke abilities?
Just remember that your artillery also has smoke. So if your units don't have smoke, you can use artillery to supplement that. Usually mortars.
Yeah, that's something I am definitely going to start using a lot. Is smoke for my infantry pushes, and then smoking off my helicopter landing spots.
Yeah, it's super helpful.
It's going to help a lot. I didn't do it just because I was lazy.
It's very micro intensive.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
You get very lazy, but it will definitely be very, very efficient to use smoke in those scenarios.
Something good to think about with this too is it's a little bit more of an advanced tip, but you can you choose your area to smoke off, and then you could hold fire onto your smoke shooter, your artillery or mortar asset, and then it'll prep the fires, but it won't shoot until you let go of hold fire, and then it'll shoot it on command instantly for you.
Yeah, I mean that's the same. Yep, full artillery.
Yep.
You can make sure you use the hold fire. It's such a useful mechanic for all sorts of things, and yeah, for your artillery is another one.
Yep.
Like pre-aiming like a smirch or something at a place where you know that tank pushes might come, and then you can have it pre-aimed and ready to fire. Like as soon as they drive into it, you just let it go.
Yep. So now we're going to go into trees versus buildings for cover or concealment. In this game, cover and concealment does exist. In real life, cover or concealment, or correction, cover and concealment is not the same thing. Cover stops bullets from hitting you. Concealment stops people from seeing you. But for Broken Arrow, it does mix into each other. So trees, they could provide that 2x stealth buff, like we said, but it also provides a 2x damage reduction as well. So trees and buildings both have the same thing, where it reduces the incoming damage that you take by 2x. And it doesn't matter if the trees are burnt out or if the building is blown up. But one thing to say about the buildings is if a building drops on your infantry, it'll force a roll on every single infantry person inside the building to survive or not. And then usually it's a death roll instead of a survive roll.
Yeah, it can just wipe out the squads entirely.
Mm-hmm. All right. That's kind of it for trees and buildings, unless you have anything else you could think of.
No, I mean, I was surprised when you said about the damage reduction. Is that including tanks or is it just infantry? So I don't think I've ever noticed it necessarily decreasing for armored engagements, but maybe I'm just playing the game wrong.
That's interesting. I don't know, because I don't play armor that much. I play mostly infantry. I'll have to look into that.
Infantry maybe take less damage in forest, but I don't know if vehicles do.
Yeah, someone in the comments probably does know. So if you do know, please let us know. But
yeah, it feels like something we should know, but I never really thought about it.
I never tested it or thought about it. When I've had armor, I put it in there just because it makes me feel better, at the very least. but I really don't know.
Yeah, because I don't feel like when a launcher fires at a vehicle in close range, right, in a forest, that it's taking less damage than it should, right?
That's a good point. I don't.
You know, when you're firing your AT4 at a BMP at point blank, it's still doing full damage.
Yeah.
It's not like it's getting halved because they're in trees.
That's interesting. And we forgot to bring up something for the damage thing as well, because kinetic over distance, it reduces how much damage it does too.
Yep. And then there's heat, which doesn't
get affected by that at all.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I forgot about that, but fun little keynote there. All right. Now we're going to go into the super fun part here, the economy system. So how the economy in Broken Arrow works. So
work in progress.
Yeah. So first things first, right, is when you're building your deck, you want to maximize the amount of points that you have in your deck, because that is what the game sees as your starting point, right? So the maximum amount of points you can get in your deck is 10,000. And then what that means is if you have 10,000 points in your like available to be called out, or like you haven't brought anything out, the game just started, you're at 300 income per minute, right? And then it ticks throughout time. So once you start bringing units out into the field, it starts dividing that 10,000 that you have, and it makes that 300 lower by the division. I don't know the actual math on this because I'm not like the smartest person, but obviously, like if you start off with 10,000 and I call out 5,000 points worth of units, then I'm down to only 150 income per second, or Jesus Christ, per minute. 150 per second would be crazy. So that's how the economy system works, basically, just for like the income itself coming in. Now to go into like the RTB stuff that we brought up before, once you start RTBing things, it brings back to that full amount that you had when you started the game. So then you start going back up in your per minute tick of your points.
Yep. Also, when something dies, since the playtest, at least, it also refunds your income.
Yes. So there used to be a death tax, which a lot of people are familiar with. That has been removed. So you're going to feel like you have way more points when you're playing Broken Arrow now versus before if you're a returning player.
And also, if you're ahead, it's also going to feel like you're going to not be able to take as much ground as you could before because your opponent won't be suffering from that death tax.
That's a very good point. I didn't think about it in that way.
Yeah, I did think it was a bit ruthless. I kind of like the death tax, to be honest. I feel like they could have just toned it down a little bit rather than completely removing it because, like on a personal level, I think it wasn't like an overall fantastic change after trying it.
I liked it personally. It's interesting you said that because
I did at first.
Okay, because I felt like I just like could do more. You know, like I had so much more infantry out on the field all the time, and it just felt more fun to me. I felt like I had a lot more fun.
It's absolutely more fun. Absolutely more fun. But it doesn't reward like good play. So that's the one problem I had about it is yes, it certainly makes Broken Arrow more fun because there's so much more comeback potential. If you get ruined in the early game, you're still going to be able to come back quite quickly and get back on the field. But in situations where, say, you land like this perfect bombing strike on, kill loads of stuff, now they can just instantly buy replacements for it rather than suffering the death tax for a little while.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely see your point, but I feel like a lot of people are gonna be like, "Well, the snowball effect and all that kind of stuff was too harsh on players and all this kind of stuff."
Yeah,
I get that, but what they did
I feel like there's middle ground.
Yeah. No matter what, someone's gonna be happy or sad, so it really doesn't matter what they do. I'm sure STB could cure cancer and people will be upset about it. So, with that being said, that's kind of all I have for the economy system. I'm thinking about it. Just the biggest point is when you're deck building, max out the points as much as you can. don't, if you're at like 9995, don't worry about it. It's not going to be that much of a detriment. But if you're at like 9,700, just throw extra stuff into your deck that you're probably not going to use, just to have the more points, so you aren't affected as bad. All right. Now we're going to go into the game mode structure for how the PvP is actually played. For just the base game, there's going to be a scenario editor and all this other stuff where everything's going to change. And all we're going to talk about here is just PvP, regular 5v5, 45 minutes, that kind of stuff. So,
Actually, just before we move on, sorry, I just remembered one more thing about deck building.
Okay.
You can do like the plus 10% on top. And this is something that I get questions about so much from new players. If it goes like orange, it's like plus 10%. You're in the plus 10% range, and if it's red, then you're over it. But when you're building a deck, you can add plus 10% to each category in order to get like the extra little bits you need.
Yes. Ooh, excuse me. You can definitely do that. Just be careful, because then you are taking away those allocated points from somewhere else. Because if you add up all the points normally, it equals 10,000. So you're going to short yourself somewhere else. So if your playstyle is more infantry focused like me, you can take away from, say, the armor tab or something. Just an example, right? All right. Now, with that being said, we're going to go into the game mode structure here for the 5v5, 45 minutes for like ranked and all that kind of stuff. So how it works is it is a conquest and destruction consistently, and then it's broken into 3 different phases. So you have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And then in phase 1, the maximum amount of points you can earn for your team is 6. And the way that you can get that is through capping points or earning kills. So the amount of points, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but essentially, if you have more points than the enemy, you start getting those capture points down. I don't know if you know what the actual like math behind it is. I don't know if it's like 1 point more than the enemy or something like that for like the first flag.
Well, it depends on the map, because there's different numbers of flags on each map.
Yeah, it's probably percentage based, and it's probably like 10%. If you have 10% more than the enemy, then it's like 1 flag, then maybe 20% more than the enemy.
Yeah, maybe percentage based.
It's probably that then to make it even. What I do know for the destruction score though is it's currently 1,000 points. So every 1,000 points over the enemy's destruction score that you have, it will equal 1 tick throughout the phase. So if it's phase 1, if you have 1,000 more destruction than the enemy, you have 1 destruction score that'll go towards your team. And then how you like get those points is at the end of each phase. Once the phase ends, those points are allocated to your team.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I feel like when you go obviously the second phase, it doubles and it goes to 2, and then it goes to 3.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, my throat is killing me. So yeah. Once you go to phase 2, all those ticks become +2, +2, +2, or +2, +2, +2, and then phase 3 is +3, +3, +3. So what a good thing or tip here that I would say is when you're setting up for phase 1, don't worry about the points too much. Worry more about like key terrain and areas to conduct assaults, raids, and that kind of stuff. And then phase 2 and phase 3 should really be like your focus fighting phases, in my opinion. Because the points.
Yeah, usually the first phase is about positioning and getting a good position on the map, regardless of your losses, really. You can really kind of exploit the fact that there's not many points involved. Obviously, don't try and give your opponent 6 points, but usually in the early, if you're sacrificing your units to gain ground, then you will be kind of equaling out regardless.
Yep, and then positioning is king in Broken Arrow for sure. So just make sure that don't freak out too much about the points, and then if you're seeing it, don't because I remember the first time I saw the new system, it really overwhelmed me, and I was like, what the fuck does this shit mean? It's super easy. It's super simple. Phase 1 is +1. Phase 2 is +2. Phase 3 is +3. So
yeah, and the requirements stay the same throughout all the phases.
yeah. So, yeah. Yep. All right. With that being said, that is about it. Do you have anything you want to double tap or go back over?
Not off the top of my head, no.
All right. So, guys, we went over the Recon, vision and line of sight, RTB system, armor versus penetration, which is fun, the sprintability and the smokability, the trees versus buildings for cover and concealment, the economy system, and the game mode structure. If you have anything else you wish we talked about, please drop it in the comments and then I'll respond to them. Oh, do you have something?
I've got one.
Yep.
Radar. Radar's a good one.
Oh, yes.
Seed and radar.
Okay, sweet. Little bonus thing here then. So, radar for your AA pieces. So, what radar does is there's two different ways that the radar can see. It's either high flying aircraft or low flying aircraft.
Yep.
So for high flying aircraft, when you turn your radar on, it increases the detection range and the engagement range of your system by 2 times. But for low flying aircraft, it is 1.25. And then for SEED, what SEED does is it's suppress the enemy air defense systems. It's a missile that looks for the radar signatures, and then once it's in range of those radar signatures, it'll automatically shoot, and it'll go straight to the enemy AA piece. If you're receiving SEED, don't worry. It doesn't mean it's instant death. There's ways to block it. So like the systems will try to defend themselves as best as they can. And then if there's other systems around, like SHORAD pieces, they will try to defend the incoming rounds as well.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure.
You can also turn off radar
Okay.
to stop missiles hitting you. And the best way to do that, particularly with like long-range missile systems like S-300s or Patriots, is just move them. They will instantly turn off their radar. And then the missile will either go where the unit was, or it will just veer off in a random direction because it lost track.
That is interesting. I do want to test that now that you said that. I wonder if there's like a time limit on it or something.
I imagine there's a similar system in Broken Arrow to Warno where when the missile is in flight, there's a tick, and every tick it recalculates whether or not it's going to hit. And so if you do it before the last tick, then it will probably miss.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. Alrighty. Sweet. Anything else that you can think of off the top of your head?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay. All right. All right. So just to go over everything again. So we just went over fucking recon mechanics, vision and line of sight, the RTB system, armor versus penetration, which keep in mind it's based off of old data, kind of, which was based off of not the best sources kind of thing. So keep that in mind. And then the sprintability versus the smokability, trees versus buildings for cover concealment, the economy system, game mode structure, and then a little bonus from Vulcan was about the radar and SEED. Holy shit, I forgot. One thing you could do to increase the capabilities of your anti-air pieces is to constantly have a friendly aircraft in the sky to scan the skies for you, because the AA piece can only see so far, whereas the aircraft in the air, if it's in high alt, normally can see 1,200 meters if it's not a stealth aircraft versing it. So you'll be able to engage those targets faster with your AA pieces if you have air in the air, looking out for enemy air or missiles or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, air optics are super, super important. Like the SU-27 has like 12,000 meter optics, so it's way better than your ground.
Yep. Alrighty. And I think that's about it. Vulcan, thank you so much. I have been watching your videos for years, so this is a honor to have you on here, man. I appreciate it deeply, honestly. It's kind of weird,
I appreciate being invited, I really do, and it's always good to see new content creators in the RTS scene, honestly. And I know, like you said, like Broken Arrow is your first RTS, and you're doing a great job of showing it off. So, yeah, great stuff.
That means a lot. I appreciate that, man. Alrighty. Now I'm going to head over to the Patreon shoutouts, guys. I appreciate all of you, and I'll see you next time. Shout out to Something, who once convinced a black hole to host a zero-gravity karaoke night. Event Horizon sold out in seconds. Big props to Gore, who can predict the next viral dance trend by analyzing the patterns of falling spaghetti. Applause for Fern, who once choreographed a ballet for dust bunnies. The finale featured a grand jeté into the vacuum bag. Major respect to JTT Risky, who can read the entire internet with his eyes closed just by listening to the sound of loading screens. Cheers to Lofty, who once taught a swarm of fireflies to spell out conspiracy theories in the night sky. Standing ovation for Maverick, who can fold origami so complex it unlocks secret dimensions in the paper. Big ups to Rickson037, who once convinced a microwave to write a philosophical manifesto about existential popcorn. Kudos to Rich, who can solve world hunger by baking a cake so large it becomes a new continent. Salute to Scar, who once convinced a rainbow to loop itself into a double helix just to see if it could. Props to Snigglepenny, who once organized a marathon for snails and provided real-time commentary via interpretive dance. Shout out to Jack463 Killer, who invented a new sport where lightning bolts race each other around the moon. High five to Merc Mood, who once taught a glacier to rap about climate change. Now it's got a record deal with the Arctic Ocean. That's it for now. Thank you again to all of our Patreons. I'll see you guys in the next video.